Hello, friends. I'm James. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. Welcome to the first ever Nostalgia Talk of the year, episode number 100. And I want to say three. Last one. Yeah, 103. Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks, so I'm still kind of getting back into the swing of things. But here I am, New Year, same old me. Hope you guys had a great Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever it is that you guys celebrate. Joining us for the first show of the year, let's give a big Nostalgia Talk welcome to Dan Garza.
Hey, how are you?
I am well. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Before we get started, how were your holidays?
They were fantastic. I never go out of town. I hardly ever go out of town.
Same.
Unless I'm doing, unless I'm working. And my daughter this year, she's 26, organized we went down to Cancun. And we spent like a week and change down there, and that was cool. That was very cool. She organized absolutely everything. So my wife and our kids, meaning my daughter's brother, went down there, and we had a great time. It was fantastic.
Nice.
And then New Year's was really laid back because I think we got sick on the trip. So when we got back here, everybody was doing their own thing, but my wife and I just stayed in, and she made a nice dinner. It was great.
That's nice. We actually had a white Christmas in Nova Scotia for the first time in a long time.
Holy smokes. All right.
Mm-hmm. At best, we usually get rain on Christmas or little flurries, but nope, for the first time, like they were calling for massive snow on Christmas Eve, and I could see it right out the window, and I was like, oh my God, looks like we're gonna have a white Christmas after all. I mean, that's what excited me. I like seeing snow at Christmas time.
Do you enjoy snow in general, or?
That's one of those things where it's like sometimes, like it depends. Like I was supposed to go to Montreal last winter, and the day I was supposed to leave, my driveway was covered in snow, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to get out of here. Clearly, I guess I'll just have to go another time. I am going another time in a couple of weeks, which will be nice. And that whole month, my whole sidewalk, like when I would go for walks with my dog, I'd have to go around the sidewalk.
Right. Yeah, we when we shot. Okay, I'm originally from Texas, so I saw snow once as a kid, and then I live in LA, so we see snow only when it's on set, and so or going up to Big Bear or something like that, and then they have snow up there. But we went to shoot 2 seasons of Fraggle in Canada, in Calgary.
That's right.
And holy smokes, man. Wow.
Yeah, Andy Hayward was a previous guest on the show, and he commented on how bloody cold Calgary was. I mean, I've been to Banff, which is like 90 minutes away from Calgary, covered in snow, most of the mountains.
Yeah. Well, Banff is fantastic. When my wife and kids went up for Christmas last 2 years ago, I was like, hey, well, let's go to Banff. It's fantastic. I had already visited a couple of times, and so I drove. The snow wasn't terrible, but we got up there, up to the mountain. You take you take a gondola, or I don't know what they call it, a trolley or something like that.
One of those it's one of those things that's like on a zip line.
Yeah, it's a basket on a string.
Right.
And so you're sitting or standing on top of this mountain, and it's gorgeous. Everything's like, wow. But at the drop of a hat, it just all of a sudden, snow was flowing in sideways. It was hitting me sideways. And there's my wife. My wife had packed like we'd gone down to McDonald's to get her a coffee. And she was like, I'm just going to buy something so that I have. Well, she's up there eating a little like she was a street urchin in like in New York in the 1920s. Snow is hitting her sideways, and she's bundled. The only thing that I can see on her is literally her exposed mouth as she's eating this little sandwich. Poor thing was just beside herself with cold. She's not used to that. But then the drive back was great. but Canada has more than one season, and that's fun. We went bike riding up in the mountains of Banff. They close it off at a certain time of year, and you just ride these bikes, and we had a fantastic time. It was Jordan Lockhart, Kanya Shen, Frank and Dina Meshkalite, and myself, and we went out and we just had a fantastic time. It was gorgeous. Yeah, Canada is absolutely majestic. So much so that when I had Canadian friends that visited, I was like, "Oh well, we got mountains, but kind of smaller than yours. We have forests, but kind of smaller than yours." We do have water that you can walk toward and into as far as beach goes. So we drove up to like Santa Barbara, and they were like, "This looks like it's out of a movie." So that was great. But trying to impress Canadians that are visiting with nature, it's kind of a raw deal. Sorry, guys.
That's funny. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, Dan has worked in the entertainment industry doing multiple things. He worked for Disney Interactive. He was a production assistant for Nickelodeon, shows such as Penguins of Madagascar and Fanboy and Chum Chum. But if you guys are here, then you probably know him best as a puppeteer for Henson. He performed various characters such as Charlie the Octopus, among many others, on John Tartaglia's show Splash and Bubbles. He was in the feature film The Happytime Murders, the non-Henson TV show Kidding with Jim Carrey, and is probably best known these days for taking over the role of Junior Gorg on Apple TV Plus's Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock.
Man, it makes it sound like I've done stuff. That's cool. That's fun.
Hey, if you didn't have a career, I wouldn't have asked you to do this.
What's great is that the majority of those projects have been with and because of Johnny. John Tartaglia is by far one of the most generous, heart embracing humans I've ever met. And we started out with Splash. Donna Kimball and I, who is also on Fraggle Rock.
And was a previous guest on this podcast.
Oh, was she? And she's fantastic, absolutely delightful. She and I are working on stuff right now.
Ooh.
And yeah, that we'll promote once we can. But she's absolutely amazing. And Amy Garcia also, who's Marjorie on Fraggle Rock, was with us on Splash and Bubbles. And Don and I had this rivalry on Splash to who could do the most amount of characters. And so she beat me by one. She ended up having 12 characters that she did on the show. I did 11 of them. And so we always had this, this sort of fun rivalry between the two, is to see who's gonna finish the show with more critters. But
I'm gonna send her an email and talk to her about that, because that's not something she brought up.
Yeah, she's so, like, her range is amazing. Her character creation. Anyone who's in that circle of puppeteers, they are character creators, and that's what we do. We love to bring life to these critters, or people, or inanimate objects sometimes. And it is absolutely delightful to be surrounded by people who not only are great craftspeople, they know how to do what they do, but they're also good humans. And Johnny he's this giant electromagnet that draws these beautiful people out of the woodwork, and he knows how to choose who's on those shows. Not to say that people who aren't on the shows aren't great. That's not what I'm saying at all. He just knows how to put the colors on the canvas, and which colors are working for that particular thing, and which colors are working for the next particular thing. But he himself is absolutely amazing. And in speaking to people who knew Jim Henson back in the day, they say that Johnny carries forth that spirit of Jim, and is in fact, he carries that heart of creativity, and he puts the right people together, and it's a top down sort of a thing, you know. If he isn't all of these wonderful things when you come to set, then you're not on the right set. It's just not. It's not his set to run. He and
Well,
I.
with how generous that he is, I wrote him a fan letter to kind of like say, hey, I'm a fan in Canada. I love your work. This is my favorite part of this thing. This is my favorite part of this thing. And I brought up a lot of different projects like Ernie on Play With Me Sesame, Animal Jam.
You're doing deep cuts. That's great.
Oh yeah, quite a few of them. And he not only replied in the form of an autographed picture of him with all the sprites, which he signed himself, your pal John Tartaglia and Root Ginger, but he also hand wrote a letter back.
There you go. See, that's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. You know, Johnny is, and I'll do things that are nice for folks, but he goes out of his way just to be an amazing human and someone to aspire to. You know, he really lets you. When he knows, and he lets you just be the creative artist that you are. It allows you to be the creative human that you are. It lets you be the friend that can go to him and say, look, man, I'm having a bad week. I remember one time this was after Splash and before Happytime. We were sitting in a restaurant, one of those, you know, you come in and have coffee and, you know, maybe some avocado toast or something like that. How fancy is that, avocado toast? Who charges for avocado toast? But anyway, so we're sitting there and we were talking. I was going through some rough times, and we sat there for like 3.5 hours. He was working on other stuff, and he was just the most supportive, delightful person that I could have hoped for in that moment. A true friend, a brother, and someone to provide that hope that you hope, you hope for. And he is all those things. He's genuinely all of those things. He is genuinely Splash. He is genuinely Gobo. He is genuinely Johnny from Johnny and the Sprites. He's
genuinely Ernie in terms of like the goofiness that Ernie has. You know, Ernie's very innocent and sweet. You know, even though he tends to annoy the hell out of Bert. You know, he never means to though. He's just trying to be. He's just trying to have fun. Bert's just being himself. They're both just kind of being themselves. So a little bit of that in John, I guess, as well. You know, the innocence.
We all bring a part of ourselves to the character, and we always take a part of that character away with us when we finish. So it is an exchange that happens, and hopefully we grow from the experience of the various characters that we've had the opportunity to perform.
It's awesome. Yeah. So in the intro, I listed off a whole bunch of your career highlights. And as I said, a lot of us who are listening to this probably know you best as a puppeteer. But with all the other things that you've done, it kind of makes me wonder, what did you aspire to want to become?
I just wanted to be somebody who could make stuff. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to be somebody who created stuff. That little kid who would trace over the Sunday comics and wanted to learn to illustrate. The kid who watched the Muppet Show on TV when they were new episodes. That's how old I am. I'm not as old as I always joke with my mother, for example. Like, hey, yeah. So at what point did they invent color in your age? Yeah, that's I'm not that old. But with the same kid who came face to face in glass cases at the Whitty Museum in San Antonio, Texas in 1980, whatever. and saw the stitching on Bert, on Ernie, on Cookie Monster, Kermit, like the friends, you can say quote unquote friends because you make that connection as a kid to the characters on TV. They were real, they were tangible, and I always thought, man, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to be somebody who's made a difference in someone else's life, and positively, of course. And I never thought that would come to pass until Brian Henson opened up the gates of the chocolate factory and was like, hey, come on in, and let's teach you how to do some stuff. And that was a game changer. That was a pivotal moment in my life. But what I wanted to become was just somebody who tells stories, and somebody who creates characters, and someone who can say, if I've been through this, because as a kid, you go through a bunch of crap. And people will.
Oh yeah, I went to high school.
You'll either do one of two things as you're wallowing through crap. You'll either say, "Oh, this is a lot of crap. I got to change my boots," or you can say, "This is a lot of crap. I'll bet there's some amazing flowers we can grow with this." And when you turn the crap into fertilizer and make something out of it, then that's when your perspective changes, and you're like, all right, where's the next pile of crap? And so you're always on the lookout for that. So I always wanted to be the things on a larger scale of the voices that were always there when I was a kid, the supportive voices, my grandfather, my mother, my dad, those things, and people, my grandmother, all the people that say things and they're like, hey, it's okay, kid. You don't have to worry about bullying because those guys are being bullied themselves. And that's probably why they're doing what they're doing. And so I just want to be able to do that. That's what I wanted to do. And I think, we can do that. We don't have to be on stage to do that. You can do that in a grocery store with someone who's having a rough day, or you can volunteer and help somebody out. For me, it was a combination of all of those things. And the fact that I grew up doing goofy voices and building characters and believing that the characters were alive, it lends itself to me as now a man with a gray beard, saying, oh yeah, I can draw on that experience. I can draw on this or this person that I knew, or inspiration to be able to pour genuinely into a character and allow the character to do some good for somebody else. So I guess that's a long way around your question, I hope.
Well, when you mentioned Brian Henson and when he had said, come on in, was that like, so with Henson, did you do puppeteering workshops, or how did you get involved with doing stuff with Henson?
I was standing outside of the gate and he saw me and he was like, hey kid, you look like you've got gumption. No, it was, I wish it were that way, that I was street performing or something like that. And he's like, I'm going to make you a star. And no, it didn't. But no, it was, I was working at Interactive, Disney Interactive, and I was in a desk job and occasionally doing some storyboarding and some voiceover and things like that, wherever the creative need hit. But what I was doing wasn't predominantly super uber creative. And a friend of mine sent me a Facebook post and said, hey, you do all those stupid voices. You should be interested in this. And it was a call for a diversity workshop that Henson was holding at the time. And I was like, no, I'm good. I have a 401k. I've got a steady gig. I'm completely dissatisfied with my job. I'm fine here. This is where I'm supposed to be. And that little voice in the back of my head was like, hey man, take the chance, go do it. Take the chance and don't live in what if. And I decided not to live in what if. And And so myself and like 500 other people sent in their stuff. I borrowed a puppet, borrowed a camera, and we ended up there were 30 of us that were chosen to participate in this workshop. And Kevin Clash was our teacher. Alan Troutman was our teacher. That's where I met Donna Kimball and Drew Massey and Patrick Bristow, and so it was intended for Puppet Up Uncensored, which is for those who don't know what it is, it's live puppet improvisation with musical numbers and things like that. And so that was their intention, was to broaden that pool. And if it happened to broaden for other projects, well, then that was a bonus. And by the end of it, I had recorded myself on, we did these little audition things that they were going to keep on file for producers to check out. And lo and behold, Johnny T saw my thing and he thought that I was fun and had some range, and asked me to audition for Splash. And then that's when I left the mouse and jumped on the back of the frog. And so that's where I've been.
So Splash and Bubbles was like your first ever professional puppeteering gig?
Yeah. And
along with Puppet Up as well. Yeah.
Well, Puppet Up. Okay. So Puppet Up has a long roster of people who were involved. Long roster of people who are in the wings waiting to go on as well. And so for me, it took, I think I've been doing Puppet Up now for 5 years. So it took me 4 years to get on stage.
Oh.
So it wasn't immediate. It wasn't like, this guy's funny, I got to put him on stage. It was, he's funny, but that other person is funnier. We already know who they are. And we'll put them on stage. And I was like, great, because I was having fun sitting and watching the shows. And once I got the opportunity to get on stage, then I did, when the time was right. And I've been fortunate enough to be asked back on several occasions, and I will do it for as long as they want me to or need me to. And it's delightful. It's a great exploration into finding new characters with new faces and attitudes and all of that. And then sometimes I take those characters that we bump into on stage and turn them into characters that you see on TV.
So with Splash and Bubbles, with that being more digital puppetry based, like in the case of Sid the Science Kid, like that, it looks like it's animated, but it is digital puppetry with it kind of overlaid into it. Do you find that that's more of a challenge compared to the traditional Muppet style puppetry?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because when you're puppeteering traditionally, you're looking at the camera, you're always living in a monitor, and you have a couple of things that you're dealing with. You're dealing with, am I performing? Am I acting through the character? Yes. Am I creating a great stage picture? Yes. Am I performing the character believably, grounded and with weight and all of these things? Yes. Lip sync. Okay, cool. And hand motions and stuff. I'm like, yes. Okay, great. All of those are check boxes. Cool. Enter digital puppets. Now, not only are you dealing with yes, sync, but you're also programming the character facial expressions as you're going through. You are to a certain degree, and after a while it becomes more accessible. But it's the difference between playing an accordion and playing a pipe organ. So traditional puppetry is like you're playing this accordion. when you're doing the HDPS, which is the Henson Digital Puppetry Performance System. You're sitting at a pipe organ, and all of your extremities are involved. So not only is it your dominant hand, but it's each finger on that dominant hand is controlling a vowel, a consonant, etc. Your thumb is controlling the way the tongue is going. You have a thumb cup for your eyeballs. You have another little thing on your other hand with like a joystick that you can assign for the blinks and the eyebrow raises. And then you can assign different things on pedals as well. So now you have all four, parts of your body that are like, and then your head, you're mic'd and you're doing the character, and you're tracking the lines, and you're listening to your scene partners. And if they go a different route, which that's the joy of being able to collaborate and work with other people. If the previous take, it was that of sorrow, but now it's that of maybe perplexity or confusion or something like that. You gotta keep flowing. So you're keeping all body parts in check with this. And you're just using all your extremities to bring this character to life. So it's a little more involved, the puppetry system, but it looks fantastic, and it really works. Brian and everyone else who was was and is, I'm talking iteratively over the years. It's an award-winning system that they've developed, but oh gosh, I mean the level of brain cells that they have firing on this thing, it's crazy, man. It's like a monster truck. Whoever put this thing together, and it was iterative, because if you go back to the original Fraggle Rock series, you go and you see, oh, okay, I see Richard Hunt, or I see Jerry Nelson, or doing, who and doing these characters with a little Waldo in their hand, and maybe a switch for eyelids or something of that nature. And then you're like fast forwarding through generations of like, okay, now we're going into Ninja Turtles. Now we're doing Labyrinth. Now we're doing, so we're going through all of these iterations of this technology. And now you get to this place where you're like, oh, wow. Okay. What the hell's next? What surprises are they working on now for the things that we need to do? What's the next iteration of these things? And you see it in not only on shows like Splash, but you saw it on Earth to Ned. You saw it on, Happytime Murders. You saw some of that technology in Happytime Murders, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's like, it's not just painting with oils. It's throwing in watercolors and pastels and all of these other mediums that you wouldn't think of, like, drenching it in coffee, and you're like, yes, now it gives it depth, and so, yeah, they're so much smarter than me, and I'm just trying to keep up. That's all I'm trying to do, is keep up.
Well, talking about the Waldos, it's kind of an interesting technology to think about. And you mentioned Frank Meshkalite. I know that Frank does Pa Gorg on the new Fraggle Rock series,
among many others. Yes.
Yeah, but he was also the body puppeteer for Junior in the original at one point. Did he kind of
season five? Yeah.
Yeah. Did he kind of give you any pointers on how performing the Gorgs worked? Because you do Junior now, so like. And with Frank doing Pa, you doing Junior, did you guys work together to kind of coordinate the performances and kind of work with everybody as to how it was going to work?
Yeah. So when we first started, he took me over to one corner. He said, "Now, son, let me tell you something." No, he wasn't nearly as.
That was a good impression.
Oh, thanks. He wasn't nearly as overbearing as Pa is. Frank
overbearing. Pa's rude. A dummy for a son.
All right. Well, he's gotten better. Pa has definitely gotten better. He still has his moments, but he's gotten significantly better. Anyway, Frank is the exact opposite of Pa.
Right.
And so when season 1, Frank was co-captaining with Johnny, and so we had workshops on for the marriage of both. I'll take you again back to Splash. I was for the first, I don't know, third of Splash, I was Amy Garcia's body. She was Ripple, and I was the body for her out in the volume. So she would do the face and the voice of the character, and then I would follow. And then I was Sarah O took over Ripple's body, and I went in to become Dunk's body with Raymond Carr, who is not only a lovely man, but he's got an exhibit coming up at the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta. So go see it if you're in the area. Go see it Sunday. Raymond Carr. $10 buys you the seat, but you only need the edge. No, he's Ray and I developed, and he's having a baby. Oh man, there's so many. There are wonderful people on this planet who need to reproduce. And Raymond Carr is one of them. And I'm so glad that he's having a baby and making his world broader and wider. And it's so good. Anyway, that being said, the importance of the relationship between body and mind of the character is critical to the success of the character being completely whole. I can't do Junior without Benny. I can't. Without Ben DeRoche inside that suit, Junior's just a head. That's all he is. Mm-hmm. The same way that and I dare to say that the same relationship happens with Frank and Andy, or Amy and Ingy. Dare I say that's the relationship that happens.
Yeah, it's not like in the case of like Big Bird, Snuffleupagus, Sweetums, or Sam the Robot, where like Carol Spinney for Big Bird or Matt Vogel now would be inside of the puppet with their dominant hand in the head. This is much more technical than any of the Sesame Street ones.
It really is to a large degree, simply because if we aren't on the same page, we don't work at all. I could be looking the wrong way. I could be saying the wrong thing. Benny could be, moving in a very active pace when my voice is super mellow, and it just doesn't make sense. So many times we'll take each other's lead, and that was one of the things that Frank had brought to the mix. I had brought it historically from Splash. He had brought it historically from Fraggle, and so we decided early on that those relationships needed to like, and Amy as well. They needed to be solidified in a really delightful like relationship. I wanted to get to know everything there was to know about Benny. And so, because we needed to be able to predict each other's movements. And not only was it because it was a work thing, which for me, that's like, that's my holy grail. It's always my holy grail. The work is always the holy grail. The people that are involved in it, those are the knights of the round table. And so I needed to know that I was in a safe place, that the choices that I was making, again, acting is very, very personal and it's based on true experiences. That I wasn't going to be working with somebody who's like, yeah, sure, whatever. I needed somebody who actually cared. And again, goes back to Johnny, who brings these people who actually care. They care about the work, but they care more about the humans that surround them. And so when Frank and I and Amy and Andy and Ben and Ingy when we were working Gorgs, and I had some, some experiences as an animator in my background as well. That because you have these big bodies, these giant bodies with like accoutrement, so they got lots of hair or lots of fabric, and it's really easy to lose those poses. So I was like, let's go pose to pose. So the pose of Junior with his hand up in the air, or with Junior as he's raking, and as he's, those need to be clear silhouettes. And at any point that you pause it, it needs to read somehow. So if you didn't have the volume on, could we still know what the hell is happening? And yeah, you could, because I would follow Benny's lead, or Benny would follow my lead. And so there's this symbiosis that happens, and we're like, finishing this, moving into that. He knows that then he knows that he's got to, bring in his chest in order to bellow out something or whatever that is.
So it's not like written in the script.
Sometimes it'll be like Junior size. And so it's like, okay, I know that there's going to be that, but Benny doesn't have a script in his head. He's got a little monitor. He's got an earpiece, and we weighed the head. He's got 18 pounds on his head. Mm-hmm. And he's moving around in this fashion. So now he's got to memorize what I'm going to say. Yes. He's got to, and we do a lot of rehearsals without the heads beforehand. And so he knows the paces, and we make sure that everything is safe, so he's not tripping on stuff or falling into this or going too far. And he can hear me, so I can see what's going on, and he can see his monitor to a certain degree. And so we do different things to maintain the safety of everyone involved, but also we have to stick to the core. What's the character going through at this point? Does that justify having his mouth open? Does it not? The movements and such. And so, yeah, Frank brought a lot of historic knowledge from the original series, attitudinally about it. And then I also had in the back of my head all the time, well, how am I supposed to honor Richard's legacy? I mean, he built this guy. He came up with this. How do I, and as a kid watching it, or, all the fans that loved Richards Jr., how do I honestly make him mine in the process? And it was it was Kevin Clash who I had approached, and I was like, man, I'm trying to do this. You knew Richard. I mean, tell me more about him. And I'm trying to like deep dive into Richard Hunt's psyche in order to understand him and what the motivations are behind the character. Because we, like I said before, we bring ourselves to the character, right? Bring little parts of ourselves to the root of the character. And he said, first off, you're never going to be Richard. And I was like, that's like when you're like, oh, that's cold water. Okay, I get it. I'm never going to be Richard. He said, second, the best that you can do is be honest with the character. And he said, that's what you do. You do that anyway. So you're ahead of the game. Keep going. Just be honest with him. And that's what Frank brought it. Frank brought that knowledge of like, hey, man, you're not Richard Hunt. You are not. You are Dan Garza, and you're doing a fantastic job. Dave Goals would send me little encouraging messages saying, I love what you're doing with Junior. Keep it up, et cetera, et cetera. And I'd say, it's not just me, it's Benny. He's like, I get that, but you're doing the heart. You're doing the, you're doing the voice. And so you're bringing that character.
Yeah, because between Kevin, Frank, and Dave worked with Richard the longest. So
yeah. And when I went to him for advice on Philo, I set up a Zoom meeting with him, and I was like, hey man, what makes Philo tick? I've been studying you. He says, well, for starters, you're studying the wrong person. You should be studying Richard. And I was like, it goes back to Richard. Everything goes back to Richard. And so it was, I said, why? He said, because I was copying Richard. His Philo was following Richard's Gunge. And he was, they were just two. He says the core of them, they're two New Jersey teens who are in love with Marjorie. That's what they are. And he says, you find that, but study Richard, because I was just imitating him, which sounds simplistic. But Dave was making his own. He was building his own nachos, man. He may have been like, hey, Richard's having nachos, I want that. He was building his own nachos. So they are different. Those two kids are different. And playing alongside Johnny, he as Gunge is so great. I have to bring a thesaurus every time, because we'll find superlatives and we'll just start riffing on superlatives. So he'll say, that's good. And I'll say, that's great. He'll say, that's awesome. Oh, that's stupendous. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's splendiferous. And so we'll just go back and forth and back and forth and back, and until we run out of just physical words. And I'll do something like, and that's oh boy, and just dive into my little rat hole. Yeah, so preparation with Frank was fantastic. We had Gorg camp, and we worked things out. We wrote our own little scripts for season one, before season one, while we were rehearsing, getting to know everyone. And then I was in the creature shop for hours and hours, trying to get Junior, trying to find the mechanism and working through it, so that when I was on set, I didn't have to worry about the technical. I could just worry about the heart and the story.
Talking about Richard Hunt, that kind of makes me wonder, have you yet read the biography that came out?
I'm about a third of the way through, and
I just started.
Yeah, what do you think?
So I just finished chapter 1 yesterday, and okay, the most interesting story that I've gotten out of it so far, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more as I keep going. Again, I'm just on chapter 2, so okay, I've got a long way to go. But the thing that really made me think oh wow, was when it was explained that Richard tried to get on Captain Kangaroo because they had a connection with Gus, and Gus was like, you are not working on Captain Kangaroo. Bob Keeshan is a horrible person. I don't want you anywhere near him.
Fortunately, that hasn't been my experience with most of the projects that I've been on.
Right.
Everyone's been delightful. But, we do need those people in our lives that are going to tell us, that are going to warn us of hey, so hey kids, if you know someone that's not great to work with, if you know someone who's just not great in life, make sure you let your friends know privately and discreetly, because you don't want other people to suffer the same stuff that you did, and you don't know where that's going to go. Cheryl Henson has this thing where she said she lives a life of green lights, and we may want something so bad. You may want to be, I don't know, a ship captain, and you're like, yes, I'm gonna sail the 7 seas and it's gonna be fantastic. But what's maybe something stopped you from getting on that ship, and that ship was the Titanic, the Lusitania, or whatever it might have been, and you're like, oh, that maybe that particular thing wasn't good. Now I can go do this other thing. When life slows you down, reassess, and you can persevere. There is nothing wrong with perseverance and being stubborn about things, because that's how a lot of things get done. But other times, the shifting of something, if you look at what happened with Walt Disney and Oswald, which then led to Walt Disney and Mickey, through Works, by the way, is never spoken about enough.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Was a genius, an absolute genius. And he deserved more in life. But the whole concept of like, oh, this is the worst thing in the world. Nothing worse can happen. Trust me, man. Sometimes getting the gig, it could be the worst thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
It really could be. So yeah. Read on because it gets so much better.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep going.
Yeah.
Dan Garza, the motivational speaker, everybody. So talking even more about Richard, like when the Fraggle Rock reboot was announced, because it started as the short form series on Apple TV Plus, and then they said that we're doing a full on reboot. I remember thinking, what characters are going to come back? We're already seeing the OG Fraggle 5. And I said this to Andy Hayward. With the Gorgs, I was a little bit nervous about that because those puppets are friggin' humongous and are probably and he had actually told me that Ma and Pa are the original Gorgs on this new series.
With some adjustments.
Right. And which I didn't really realize, because I know that after a long time, puppets tend to turn to Jim Martin. Do you know who Jim is? Yeah. Jim Martin worded it best. They tend to turn to toast.
They do toast.
Yeah. So I actually kind of thought maybe the Gorgs were like going to be, or were completely rebuilt. And then Andy explained that Ma and Pa are the originals. But with getting the role of Junior in particular, how did that happen for you?
So are Philo and Gunge.
Holy shoot. Really?
Yeah. Wow. Philo and Gunge, the ink spots, a lot of the cave creatures you see in the background, those are all OG. That big old Gorg hen that Red jumps over. God, was it? I Knew I Was Good, I think. That I got to puppeteer. That's from the original show that was never used. And so we got to debut that. I'm sorry, I got excited about toast old characters. And what was your question?
So with Junior Gorg, like, how did you get the part of Junior?
By doing a horrible Wembley audition. That's going back to like, this didn't work out. It's the worst day of my life. Trust me, guys, it was horrible. So Henson reached out and they were like, "Hey, we're doing Fraggle Rock. Let's keep it on the down low. Shh, keep it quiet." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Are you looking at me for like a doozer or whatever?" And they were like, "No, can you audition for Wembley?" And I was like, yeah, maybe. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, let me study. So I started studying. And so then I auditioned for him. And so I auditioned and then I shot it over to Clash, which actually is not a bad thing because he watched it and he was like, "That's a great character." And I was like, "Great." He says, "That's not Wembley. I don't know who the hell that is, but that's a great character." Are you kidding? Okay. All right. If I had sent it to him before and found that out, I probably wouldn't have sent it in. Anyway, I bombed. It was a huge, it was terrible. It was really bad. And then I thought, well, okay, that ship has sailed. You had a shot, and that was good. And I didn't hear anything for forever. And then I got a message saying, "Wembley didn't work out. Great. Would you be interested in Junior?" And I said, "How the hell do I audition for that? Like, do I have to build a puppet? Do I have to show you that I can?" And they're like, no, just like, let's see. We know what you can, Johnny knows what you can do puppet wise. Like he knows that you're a good puppeteer. That's not in question. The question is, can you do Junior? And I immediately, you know how the story ends. I said no. To myself, I said no. To them, I said, let me see what I can do. But on the inside, I was like, I'm never going to hit that. I'm never going to unlock that combination. And I just don't think that I can do it. And all of the voices from my past that were there, all of the little bullies, all of the times that I had failed, all of the I told you so's, those all it was. Have you've seen Gladiator? When Commodus comes out what's his face? When Russell Crowe comes out into the arena, and he's like standing there, and he's like, and he hears all of these people just chanting against him. That's what was going on in my head for Junior.
Oh, wow.
And there was one little voice inside that was like, just do it. Just do it. Just do it. It could have been Philo. Hey, just go ahead and do it. All right. Yeah, give it a shot. And so it could have been, I don't know. And so I tried and I failed, and I tried and I failed, and I tried and I failed. And I watched interviews or tried to find interviews with Richard Hunt, which were few and far between. And then I found this little clip where it literally, like, he's talking, like he's speaking as Junior for maybe 15 seconds. And then he gets embarrassed and he's like, oh, and he goes.
Is that the one where he's talking about like how he developed Junior as a character, where it came from, and then he starts talking like Junior, the one you put on the circus with the Fraggles.
Yeah, exactly. That's the clip. And I saw that, and I saw what his mouth was doing, and I saw what his face was doing. I saw where his heart was for that little instant. It gets embarrassed, and then he's like, you don't want any of this pie. You don't need pie. This pie stinks. You don't want this pie. And I was like, I want to see that pie. And so he must be hungry, because all the right references had like nachos and pie, and I don't know what else the hell I said. Toast.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot. But I was like, okay. And so I was looking at him. I wasn't trying to find the character. I was trying to find Richard, and it clicked. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. And so, me being the dumb overachiever that I am, the scene that they sent me had 5 characters in it. It was Junior, Ma, Pa, and then the 2 shrubs in that scene that you see in episode, I don't remember what episode it is, where it's Kira Hall and Inge Hansen doing the shrubs. And all of a sudden I'm doing all of them, and I'm layering it, and I sent that off to them, because again, sometimes you think producers, once they hear it all together, then they hear it all together. And I think it was Tim O'Brien said, Dan, could you please we know what you can do. Would you please just send Junior? And I was like, all right, cool. So then I just isolated the track and sent it off, and I had sent it to Clash ahead of time this time. And I said, I want you to listen to it, but I want you to be on the phone when we listen to it, because I need your gut reaction. I need your knee-jerk reaction, your most honest Baltimore reaction. And he said, that's Junior. That's Junior. And that's when we had the conversation about, well, I'm trying to, I can't accept compliments very often. And so I deflected immediately, and I was like, yeah, I'm just trying to uphold Richard's legacy. And he's like, look, you're never going to be Richard, but what you're doing is fantastic. And that's Junior. And so I sent it in semi-confidently. It was like I was standing behind, Clash as I sent that in, like, Kevin says it's okay. And so I sent that in.
That sounded exactly like Elmo. talking about Kevin.
Oh man, all of a sudden he'll burst into, like, he doesn't mean to, it just happens. we're having a conversation, and just like all of a sudden Elmo pops out or something Elmo adjacent. You're like, that's it's just him.
Well, it's funny that Kevin is the one who kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Would help out with the auditions for these characters. Because I heard that Richard would do the same thing for the original Fraggle Rock. That's another thing Kevin took over from Richard, auditioning and also Elmo.
I don't know if he was I don't think he was involved with the auditions for Fraggle, but he was certainly my sounding board.
Okay.
For like, I needed somebody that I could trust to say that sucks. We all need somebody in our life who isn't just like, oh, that's such a good job. Oh, Curtis, you're doing such a good job. We all need somebody who's like, oh yeah, that's garbage. I need to know when it's garbage because I need to know that I can fix it. And if all I hear is nothing but praise, then I'm never gonna deal with the reality of where it is. But I still need the hope. I'm always going to carry that hope with me. Anyway, send it in, and a couple of weeks later, I get a text from Johnny saying, "Hey, honey, are you available?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So he gives me a call and he says, "So what are you doing for the next 6 months?" And I broke down into a pool of tears. And he said, "We want you as Junior, and we have a couple other characters that we'd like for you to do. This is going to be amazing." And he was right. It is. It's absolutely astonishing. And I would have never imagined this for myself. I would have never imagined this for the world, because it's important. And what the show deals with are things that people need to be talking about.
Mm-hmm. I'm of course thinking about the great Glitterini episode, which is probably the best thing Fraggle Rock original series beyond has ever done.
Yeah. For that, for that, I had to, Junior's 500th birthday, for that was a big deal for me.
500. Wow.
It was his 500th birthday, and he had the boxing ceremony.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
And so he had to figure that out. I'm so glad you forgot about that. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. No. The fact that Pogi is going through like this, he becomes this wise sage in this by just being himself and being true to himself, or their selves. And the fact that Wembley goes through everything that Wembley goes through, and that Glitterini is there to embrace all of it. It speaks volumes to where we are in the world and what we need to hear. Yeah. But again, for that, for me as a performer, let's talk about me. For me as a performer, I had to find some honest place for Junior's trepidation. And I'm a straight guy. So I'm having a cis mindset, and I'm certainly an ally. But I wanted to know more. So I had to prepare myself, by trying to educate myself as much as I could, reading books, listening to podcasts, watching documentaries, interviewing my friends who were gender fluid, or trans, and being as completely honest as possible. What did you feel in this? If you were in this situation, what would you feel? And having to choose between a tall narrow box or a squat wide box, for the rest of your life. This Gorg ceremony is trying to dictate those parameters. And and Junior decides that he would rather dance and sing and be who he is in that moment. And Wembley learns amazing lessons, and Pogie shows that being Pogie is a good thing, and values that. So yeah, that's tremendously important work, and nothing that we take lightly. We don't just say, "Oh, I'm gonna go put some puppets on my hands. I'm gonna wave it around." No, there's like the thought that goes into it, and the planning, and it is so much fun. Words cannot describe the amount of laughter and tears and bonks on the head that most of us have had on set, or the amount of glitter that we found in our clothes for weeks and weeks. That weird, like you're taking a shower and all of a sudden there's glitter in the water. Like, it's just like, what is going on? And I'm talking like days and weeks afterwards. You're like, where is this coming from? It turns out it was like in my jacket, and it was like transferring onto me. Anyway, great glitterini. It was great. And again, that goes back to a team, a collaborative team. Glitterini wasn't just one puppeteer. There were 3 puppeteers involved with Glitterini. And that's, again, we don't do things alone. We do things as community, as family. So,
right.
Yeah.
So moving on from Fraggle Rock, we've talked a little bit on and off about Happytime Murders. Was that your first ever movie?
I had done some other movies.
Okay.
This was my first high profile, like, people are actually going to go to the movie theater, buy a ticket, and sit down and watch this. Okay. I had done some indie stuff in the past, and but this was like, and this was the end of my dry spell. Happytime Murders marked the end of my dry spell. After Splash, I went a full 366 days without working, because according to a friend of mine, Dan, you won the lottery, you got the house, but your house has no foundation. So what that meant was, I had the experience of like going from the production side of entertainment to now being a performer, but I didn't have the network of contacts and friends that I had worked with to get the next job. So there was time to build that network, that community, that family of trust that happens only by doing stuff. So I did a buttload of like, hey, I need help. I'm there. Hey, I need I'm there. Hey, I need a rank. Hey, I'm there. And going and building relationships to make cool stuff happen for others. And in turn, it helps me somewhere down the line. I wasn't doing it with the intention of like, I'll do this for you, but you do that for me. It wasn't that at all. It was, I need to gain the experience. I need to be road tested in order to make this happen. And thankfully I worked with a lot of really amazing people who were like, oh yeah, Dan's not a jerk. Dan's not a this, and that was amazing. And I had people like Donna Kimball, go, Dan, you can do it. And that's invaluable. But Happytime Murders broke that streak of not working. And it's been great. It hasn't been amazing, but it's been great ever since. That certainly helped. It helped a lot.
So at the intro, I mentioned that you were a production assistant on animated shows like Fanboy and Chum Chum and Penguins of Madagascar. So can you talk a little bit about what that is like being a production assistant for an animated show, because I've been a production assistant on sets before. One of the projects that I was a production assistant on, there was animation in it, but we actually shot it live. There was actual humans interacting in it, and there was also puppets in it as well.
What was it?
So it's on YouTube. It's called Clue Kids. I can send you the link.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I actually did an animated character in it, and I also got to do a puppet. I did not do the puppet's voice. They just needed some shots of it moving, and I was like, all right, I'll because I was already assisting the guy who was doing the puppet, so I was like, I'll put it on my hand. I don't mind. So yeah, for that, I was
I want to see that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll send you the link. So for that, I was just kind of like handling, assisting with camera and sound and props and all that stuff. But for a show that's entirely animated, like what is like that? How does that work being a production assistant?
First off, it was weird. So I started at Disney Feature Animation. And then when my contract ended there, I was a coordinator, through, and again, this goes back to networking through a bunch of connections over the course of years while like in animation school and going to conventions and going to this. And I made friends with someone at Nickelodeon on the HR side. And she was tremendously supportive. And she's like, "Oh yeah, you remind me of Jeff DeGrandis, who's a fantastic human and an amazing animator and illustrator." And she's like, "Oh, I'll put you in contact with it." And so she was already like, I was already on her radar. And I called her up out of desperation my last week at Disney. And I was like, "Hey, man, so I will be unemployed soon." And so she was like, "Oh, yeah. I'll see what we have available." And it was the Nickelodeon had done a show called Tack and the Power of Juju. And so that's what started their CG department. And so Penguins and Fanboy were the next shows that were being done there. So they were still like in their infancy, getting their sea legs. And so I got pulled in, thankfully, and the pay was horrible. Man. I don't know how we survived. Through the grace of God, we were able to because living in LA is not cheap. And it was terrible. Anyway, it's a CG show, so everything needs to be built. And the PAs on there, well, what we did was we would take a look at the assets and characters and props and sets. So everything that was coming in, getting built in-house, we had to go and make sure that they were following through on the iterations. Any meetings that we had for notes for the different things, either characters or props or whatever, we had to move them manually through the pipeline to get it done. So it starts in concept, it goes to modeling, and then texturing, rigging, all that stuff as it goes through that pipeline. And you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of items from different shows. And so sometimes we would have a prop on Fanboy that we could use in Penguins. So they would take the asset from Fanboy and tweak, so they don't have to build it from scratch, and then retexture it and then reuse it. And so we would take a look at things like that too. Incidentally, if you haven't seen Fanboy and Chum Chum, you need to watch it. If not,
I remember Fanboy and Chum Chum. I love that show.
If for nothing else, to jump into the mind of Eric Robles, who is to this day, we still text back and forth. We have lunch every blue moon. And he is a Latino show creator. He was a character designer, and his story from like his beginnings to where he is right now. I think he's working on Star Trek. I think he's working on a Star Trek show, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. If he's not, then he should be. So we're putting that out in the universe. But I thought those were the murmurings. Anyway, that's the day to day on a PA on that kind of thing. And every once in a while, I'd sit in on VO sessions or guide talent to one place or the other, or things like that. And then I started doing the job of a coordinator, but I was getting paid as a PA, and I was like, well, this blows. So I brought it up to one of the line producers on it, and she was like, sorry. And so that afternoon, I put up my resume on out of spite. I will admit, out of spite, on monster.com. And somebody contacted me like 3 hours later and said, hey, would you be interested in working at Disney? And I was like, what? So after that, it was 3 weeks later, and I was starting my first day at Disney Interactive. And then that lasted me for 6 years. I was there until I decided to leave. But yeah, that's what a PA does.
Mm. That's really cool that you got to sit in on the VO sessions as well.
Oh yeah. That was awesome.
So to wrap it up, we were talking about Happytime Murders, and I brought up in the intro the TV show Kidding,
Yes.
and that makes me wonder because they had some pretty big names on a lot of these projects.
Right.
To wrap it up, do you have any celebrity stories from your career that you'd like to share?
Do you? Okay. Yes, I do. So on Kidding, I played a character named Ennui. Is Mike still picking me up?
Good. Yep, I can hear you.
So I played a character named Ennui La Triste. He was a French
Not to be confused with the character from Inside Out 2.
which I will get to. But bonjour, monsieur. I am Ennui Le Triste.
I know that none of the listeners can see it, but I'll put a picture of it right there of Ennui.
For those of you who are listening, which I would assume you are, I was gifted the puppet Ennui, and so I got to work with Jim, who was absolutely fantastic to work with. He was nothing but warm and welcoming, collaborative with me, let's see. Let me give you. Okay, so we had a young up and coming musician on our show.
Oh.
I don't know if you've heard of her. Her name was, oh gosh, it starts with an A and it rhymes with Rihanna Grande. Yeah. So Ariana was on our show, and she came in to be. She was shooting for us 2 days. She came in, and she was Piccola Grande, the pickle fairy of hope. And she had scenes with Ennui, and we had this big musical sequence and stuff like that. And so she and I are sitting beside each other. I have Ennui on one hand and my jaw in the other, because I'm sitting next to this person. And I was like, is her voice real? Like, is it stuff that they do? And she was funny and very approachable and things like that. And so she's sitting next to me, and because I grew up in a recording studio as a kid. My father was a recording engineer. And so I know that we can take voices and sweeten them up. So somebody who sounds like, sounds like a flailing, car, like can actually sound like in reality after we do a little magic. And so I was like, I wonder how much of that is her. And so she's sitting beside me on like a little Apple box or something. We're getting ready to do this like all the characters pop out. and she's going through her runs, and she's like for no one other than herself, just so she knows what she's doing, because she was singing live as well. And and when she finished, I don't know what the hell happened to me, man, because I don't do this kind of stuff. I respect other performers and their process, but she finished, and Ennui looks over at her and he says, "Your mouse, there is music coming from your mouse." And she said, "What?" She starts laughing. She said, "What'd you say?" And I said, "There is a petit orchestra in your mouth, and it's making music. C'est parfait." And she laughs and laughs, and she stands up and she says, "Yo, everybody, Ennui's got it going on. If we get a third season, I want him to be my love interest." And I was like, "Oh, she loves Ennui." And so later on in the so we do the thing, blah blah blah. And she's like, blah, 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 blah. She goes to her trailer, and the showrunner comes up to me and it says, "Hey Dan," as Dave Holstein, who has like a majestic mind, and he has this fantastic heart that is a sun that is like shining over his majestic mind. He's got so many things going on up there, and he also wrote Inside Out.
Inside Out too,
where Ennui shows up, and so that's it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, isn't it?
But they didn't ask you to do Ennui; they made it female,
and she did an amazing job. Absolutely fantastic. I was taking notes the entire time. But the so he comes up and he's like, "Hey Dan, so we're, Ariana really likes Ennui. She thinks he's fantastic." And I was like, "Oh, great, I do too. We have so much in common." And he says, "Can we give her one of your stunt doubles?" And I had 5 Ennui stunt doubles, and I said, "Dude, it's your dime. You can do whatever you want. This is your show." And he's like, "All right, cool." So as her parting gift, they gave her her pickle wand, which it's splayed with a bunch of different pickles. So she has been a wand carrier before Wicked, and then they gave her Ennui, and I was like, "Dude, that thing's gonna end up in a box somewhere, like in a closet. It's gonna end up in storage, like that big Indiana Jones scene at the end where like Raiders, where they're pushing the ark into this big warehouse with all those boxes. Like that's what's gonna happen to Ennui, stunt Ennui." A few months later, after we wrapped, she posts this thing on Instagram, and it's a couple of dogs on her bed. It's a black and white photo, which was later deleted because of XYZ. And in the background on her mantelpiece, next to a record of Barbra Streisand,
was Ennui.
Ennui La Triste was sitting on her mantelpiece in that bedroom, and it warmed my heart so much to know that it wasn't Hollywood bull crap. It was like she genuinely enjoyed her time there. We genuinely made something that was great, and she wanted to remember it. And it seemed, yeah. So that's my kidding celebrity story. Dun, 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 dun.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I've got here. Is there anything you want to say to wrap up?
Hey kids, follow your dreams. And also know that when you fall down, you're only closer to your dream than you were before, if you had been walking. So if you stumble, get the heck back up. If you fall, get the heck back up. Surround yourself with good people who are going to call you out on stuff, and find peace. And if you need help, oh man, mental health, please. If you need help, reach out and get help. If you don't feel seen or heard or understood, get help. find someone who is there for you and can value you. And over the course of your therapy, I hope that you will find that you, that not only do you matter to people around you, you matter to yourself, and you are fantastically made and loved by, if no one else, me. So yeah, go do your thing.
Well, Dan, thank you for joining me for the first nostalgia talk of the year.
Yeah. Keep those resolutions, or try.
And to everyone out there listening, I'll see you next time on the next nostalgia talk. Peace out.
Peace out.